So the NFL Combine is happening right now, and there's a lot of interesting storylines coming out. Obviously, this is kind of a unique year. It's kind of one of the first years there's been a lot of top prospects that have opted out of doing drills at the Combine. A lot of them have opted out of just even being there at all. And, you know, there's a lot of guys that are obviously at this time of the year getting a lot of attention. One of the guys that we're going to focus on today is Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, these concerns that we're going through today have been happening for a little bit now within the Dynasty community. And I think it's just time to set the record straight on this one. I've heard a lot of discussion, and I'm sure you have as well. Is Marvin Harrison overvalued? Is he overrated somehow in Dynasty? Is he worth the 101 or the 102 in Superflex leagues? We're going to discuss that today because I'll be honest here, I really find this conversation to be pretty redundant at times. And that should let you know exactly where I stand right out of the gate. But first, this is a new channel exclusively for Dynasty. So please go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support if you get value from this video today. So the first thing that I want to discuss this here was I wanted to discuss the fact that there's been a lot of prospects over the years that have been surefire prospects that people have overthought to the level that it just gets totally redundant. Now, I don't want to just stay within the scope of wide receivers. Let's go back last several drafts, look at the 101 consensus, and discuss whether or not these concerns were valid. So let's go back to 2021 with Trevor Lawrence, right? In 2021, Trevor Lawrence was obviously the clear 101 in that class right there. And the concerns with him were that, look, this guy, as far as being a prospect goes, he's excellent, right? Like, he's got everything physically that you want. Arm strength, he's got athleticism, he's got the size, he's got the mobility, he's got everything that you need from a quarterback in this day and age. Well, the one major concern that people started to really crop up during the draft process was there was an interview going around with him saying, you know, I don't really care that much about football. And I actually do think that that was a, you know, in hindsight, a legitimate concern because, yes, he is still a decent player in this league, but he had his issues in 2023. Took a step back from where he was in 2022. Let's look at one more. Joe Burrow in 2020. Joe Burrow was the consensus #1 pick. And Joe Burrow at that time was coming off a fantastic season in college football with the LSU Tigers. Now, obviously, that season was so elite, so stacked with talent at LSU. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, good in college. Patrick Queen, so many good players in the NFL today and at LSU. So the concerns that were being thrown is that, well, maybe he needs a lot of help. I think that that current concern has been not necessarily crushed because he does have Jamar Chase, but this guy brought the Cincinnati Bengals, a dysfunctional franchise, to the Super Bowl his first year. And the other concern was that his hand size. That one is just ridiculous. Joe Burrow's obviously trying to be great. So the concerns right now with Marvin Harrison Jr. The biggest concern that I have seen with Marvin Harrison Jr. are related to his speed. Now, this is actually a really interesting conversation because the majority of people out there at Ohio State, at or affiliated with Ohio State, say that this guy is going to run a 4.3 at their pro day. This guy was apparently logged going 22 miles an hour during the 2023 season. Some people think that this guy is not quite as fast as he appears sometimes and not quite as fast as Ohio State will say sometimes. So that's the biggest concern here is what is his 40 time going to be? Is this guy actually going to be a fast player? And the NFL values speed so much more than we need to in fantasy football, especially when we're picking out Dynasty rookies. So last year in my 2023 Dynasty rookie draft guide, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an insight into what I was studying. So I took a 10-year sample size from 2022 to 2012. So back to 2012 and to 2022, I took the top 20 40-yard dash times during that time at the wide receiver position. And you can see those guys on the screen and what they ran in the 40 time. So what I want to take notice of here is look at how many guys on this list right here were fantasy relevant. Try to pick them out right here. Even just fantasy relevant. John Ross was never lived up to his draft capital. Marquise Goodwin, no way. Henry Ruggs, obviously other issues there. Anthony Schwartz, absolutely not. KJ Hamler, no. JJ Nelson, no. Tyquan Thornton. Tyreek Hill is the first guy that we got to, and he didn't even run an official 40 at the combine. But obviously, we all know he's an absolute blazer. Curtis Samuel, I'll give you that he's fantasy relevant. Andy Isabella, no. Will Fuller was fantasy relevant. Brandon Cooks, yes, he's been relevant. Philip Dorsett, maybe relevant for a year or two, but you can't convince me that he was some kind of great dynasty asset. DK Metcalf, T.Y. Hilton, John Brown, Tavon Austin, Ryan Swift, DJ Chark, Terry McLaurin. So we're looking at a select number of guys in that list that are not just fantasy contributors. These are the guys I'm looking at that were actually fantasy superstars or very positive contributors to your roster. Tyreek Hill, Will Fuller for a season, Brandon Cooks for a little bit, DK Metcalf, T.Y. Hilton, and Terry McLaurin. Out of 20 guys, that's what we're looking at here. So what I also wanted to do, I wanted to complete this study because my theory on this is that speed just does not matter when we're talking about wide receivers in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Now, I didn't want to come away from that part of the research to say to everybody, you want to target slower guys. Like, I'm not saying to go target a guy who's running a 4.7 or a 4.8. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I did want to take a look at more bottom 20 guys that in that same time frame ran a 4.55 or slower. So we're looking at guys like Devontae Adams, Jamison Crowder, DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas, Tyler Boyd, Hunter Renfrow, Allen Robinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Cooper Kupp, Jacoby Myers. Look at how many guys there are who ran a 4.55 or below and were not just great, they were fantasy superstars at now, either during this time frame or in the past. So the point of this research was to show that, first of all, size does not even matter when it comes to fantasy football wide receivers. And I stand by that 100%. So the only thing that really is going to get me with Marvin Harrison Jr. is if he runs if he comes out and he runs a 4.7, we'll be discussing a different thing. Now, he's not running at the combine. This is being filmed on Thursday night. On the last day of February, he is not running at the combine. He'll be running at the pro day. If he comes out and he runs a 4.7, we'll have a discussion about, how much that's going to affect him. That's not going to happen, though. He's not running a 4.7. The worst I could see him doing is a 4.5. I would bet he'll be in the 4.4 range, if nothing else. But to hammer this home even further, because I just want to discuss, I think there's no chance that he is a dynasty bust. I really don't care where he lands either. He may get off to a slow start. I don't think he's going to bust though. But to hammer it home, we're going to go through my wide receiver prospect model in Dynasty Fantasy Football. This is what I use to evaluate every wide receiver in every rookie class. It's helped me find guys in the past. Guys like Jaden Reed. Guys like Tank Dell. Guys like Josh Downs. It has helped me identify those type of guys in the later to mid rounds that are very positive contributors. So we're going to go through the four most important things that make up this model right here. So the first thing I'm looking at here is what was the college breakout year. What this is going to tell me is how soon a wide receiver at the college level was able to compete at a high level on his team's roster. Now, a lot of websites, a lot of analysts on YouTube will say 450 yards is a breakout. I don't think you're a breakout until you cross 500 yards. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't have that problem. He was a sophomore breakout. So that's an A grade for me. I'm either wanting to see a true freshman, redshirt freshman, or a true sophomore breakout. Those are going to be the A grades for me. And Marvin Harrison Jr., not only did he break out in his sophomore season, but he followed it up with another strong season, just as good in his junior season as well. Now, the film breakdown here, this is the most important piece in the entire puzzle. The film breakdown means everything. And I'll give you exact examples of what I am looking for in the film breakdown. Film is very subjective. I think a lot of people will watch film on more fringe guys, someone like a Brian Thomas Jr. or a Keon Coleman or an Xavier Legette, and decide whether or not they appreciate their film or not. Film can be largely subjective. But this is what I have found to be very transmittable to the NFL. These traits I'm about to outline. I'm looking at how many layers a wide receiver has in their game, aka how many routes can they run in the route tree and how consistently can they do it. Are they deep threats? And do they have consistent sticky hands? And can they go over the middle? Can they separate often? Or are they just one of those things? I want to see them be able to do a lot of things. Marvin Harrison Jr., believe me, I was looking for things to knock him on. He has an A+ grade. He's one of the rare wide receivers in years that has gotten an A+ grade from me. Marvin Harrison Jr. does it all. He separates over the middle of the field consistently. Now, it's not always by his own footwork. It's a lot of times going to be in situations where he's just using his body and his strength to create separation. Now, whether or not that translates to the NFL level, I think it will against a lot of corners, but I don't think it will against certain corners in the NFL who are more physical. But he can do it on a very consistent basis. We obviously know he's a big, deep threat as well. He can go over the middle, he can go underneath, and he's got very sticky hands. So this guy checks so many boxes for me, it's not even funny. The reality with Marvin Harrison Jr. is obviously he's got a father who is a Hall of Fame wide receiver in the NFL. Marvin Harrison Sr. was, back in when I was growing up, one of my favorite receivers to watch ever. So I came in a little biased on Marvin Harrison Jr., but I quickly evaluated this guy and said he has his father's route running. And typically, guys who are that big and as big as Marvin Harrison Jr. do not have that route running capability. The reason why he does, and he's unique, is because if you look at his frame, he actually has a longer torso and shorter legs, sort of like his father. So his father was basically 6 feet, 5'11". This guy had the premier size for route runners in the league. A guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., he's going to be probably at least 6'3". Most of those guys are not running crisp routes on a consistent basis. Marvin Harrison Jr. is built different though. He has shorter legs, which allow him to break in and out of cuts a lot quicker, as opposed to a 6'5" wide receiver who are very rarely great separators on a consistent basis. Shorter legs, long torso, that's what Marvin Harrison Jr. possesses. Now, I am evaluating the film on as many prospects at the wide receiver position this offseason on the Patreon. I used to do it on YouTube, got in trouble for doing it there. Now it is on Patreon. So if you want to watch film with me, see the key factors, and find breakouts at the wide receiver position with me, come join the Patreon today. The link is in the comments below. Now, the next thing I'm looking at here is what was their target share like in college? Now, I always like to narrow it down and find their most recent season, because usually their last season in college is their strongest season. So I like to take a look at what the target share was in 2023. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr., very strong target share, 21.3%. That's a B grade for me. Marvin Harrison Jr. was, of course, the wide receiver one in Ohio State's offense. There was other contributors as well, obviously. You know, guys like Travion Henderson even had a decent amount of receptions. Emeka Egbuka will be a first rounder in 2025. He was plenty involved as well. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. is the wide receiver one in Ohio State, so he was a very strong target share there as well. And the last thing I'm looking at here is what is the NFL draft capital? This is going to determine how short or long of a leash a player has at the NFL level. So if you get a guy who's drafted at the 5th pick overall in the first round, he's going to have a much longer leash because the team has more money attached to him than a team would with a 5th round player. They could easily just cut bait with a 5th rounder like it was nothing. So I think we're all on the same page. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a locked and loaded first round pick. So looking at the entire prospect model, college breakout year, sophomore, grade A. Film breakdown, A+. 2023 target share, B grade at 21.3%. And the NFL draft capital is first round. He checks every single box for me. So I am so sick and tired of hearing that Marvin Harrison Jr. is overrated. I really am. I don't understand this. I think that there are so many people involved in the draft process that overthink so many players. I understand it to a certain point because when we see guys like Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, Jamarcus Russell, Ryan Leaf, guys like that bust at the highest level, it's like, well, we want to make sure we avoid that mistake. Don't overthink this one with Marvin Harrison Jr. He's the best wide receiver prospect I have seen since Jamar Chase. And one of the best probably since Calvin Johnson. Marvin Harrison Jr., in all likelihood, may end up in Arizona as well with Kyler Murray. And there's a lot worse landing spots he could be. That's not guaranteed, obviously. We're filming this way before the draft. But Marvin Harrison Jr., do not overthink this one. Not only is he a great dynasty player in the waiting, he is the 101 in both one quarterback leagues and super flex leagues in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Now, I'm really interested to hear what y'all think about this. Let me know in the comments what you think about this video right here. Let me know what questions you need answered for your Dynasty rookie draft as well, and what you're looking for this week at the Combine if you're watching it before the Combine. And if you're looking for the top Dynasty rookies in the 2024 class, click on this video right here.